Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's reading vlog is going to be a 24-hour reading vlog where I am taking the next 24 hours and reading as many Christmas horror and thriller novellas as I can. I am cautiously optimistic for this 24-hour reading vlog because it's very last minute. I decided today is Sunday, I decided that it could be fun to do a 24-hour reading vlog, so I don't work on Monday until later, and it's about 12 o'clock in the afternoon right now, so we'll just go from noon on Sunday to noon on Monday and just read as much as I can. I didn't do any preparation for this, so I am going to still sleep probably a pretty normal night's sleep. I'll probably try and stay up a bit later, maybe wake up a bit earlier, but I'm not going to try and stay awake for the full 24 hours. I actually find that my reading suffers when I try and stay awake that entire time period. So we'll see how this goes, how many books and novellas I can get through, because again, very last minute, I woke up this morning and was doing other things and decided that it would be a good time to try out a 24-hour reading vlog. I haven't done one in quite some time. I don't think I've done one at all this year, so it is a little bit overdue. I like doing at least one a year, a couple of times a year. I am in such a big reading mood, and I feel like this 24-hour reading vlog is going to combat some of the anxiety I get at the end of the year because there's just so many books, so little time. I'm also later on this month going to do a Christmas or wintry horror themed reading vlog and reading longer books for that one. But as I was researching titles to read for that vlog, so many titles kept coming up that I feel like I can get to a lot of them here. So it's going to be a very laid back and lazy December Sunday. The only thing me and my partner have planned for today is setting up our Christmas tree. We already have the Christmas tree set up and the lights. We kind of do our decoration in phases. So we do already have our tree up with some string Christmas lights. We're just going to add the ornaments on today, so we'll be doing that, and I'll be trying to read a whole lot of books. So the first novella that I'm going to start off this reading vlog with is Cain Kills by Brian McAuley. This is a part of the Killer VHS series of novellas, and they're all supposed to be like fun, campy, pulpy horror, and this one, of course, judging by the title and then also the cover, this is a very Christmassy slasher. I read my first Brian McAuley earlier this year, Breathe In, Bleed Out. That was a fun summer slasher. This one is perfect for December. So I'm gonna go dive in and I will check back in with a reading update in a little bit, and just to show you the time which I'm starting this readathon, starting the first book at 12:14. Let's go ahead and get to reading. It is now 2:21 and I've finished my first book. Cain Kills was a whole lot of fun. Just like the last book that I read from this author, it really balanced some creative kills. It was very speedy, very fast-paced, and yet there were still characters that you wanted to root for, that you didn't want to die, even though you know that it's a slasher and there's going to be a high body count. I just had a fun time with this one. It's definitely getting me into the Christmas spirit. This is one where I feel like you could pick it up Christmas Eve, Christmas morning. It's short enough, about I think 130 pages, so depending on your reading pace, this is definitely one where if you schedule your reading around Christmas, this is a great Christmas slasher. So this book takes place Christmas Eve going into Christmas of 2005. We are following a family of 4 as they're going to this cabin for a Christmas getaway. There have been some problems in the family. The parents are fighting and there's just a lot of strain on the family. They are from California, so the dad decides that it's going to be a great idea to pack everyone up and go to the middle of the mountains so they can have this idyllic white Christmas. They arrive at the cabin. It's in the middle of a very small little town, and this family quickly finds out that there is some legends surrounding the cabin that they are renting that had to deal with a fire and a family being murdered Christmas Eve 10 years ago. This book is definitely formatted like a movie, and that makes sense because Brian McAuley is actually a WGA screenwriter, so definitely it feels like a movie with a lot of the plot beats, including chapter 1, where we see someone who is disconnected from this family at the cabin doing some construction work, and you get to see that first kill that's unconnected from the rest of them, but kind of setting you up as the reader of the story to realize that things are going to go down and this family is essentially doomed. And that is a bummer because even though we know this is a slasher, this family is very flawed but very easy to root for at the beginning. The parents are going at each other and they're not in the best place with their marriage, but we can see why they work as a couple and we want things to work out for them. And then their two children, Austin and Fiona, are really fleshed out characters as well. Austin is going through some troubles where he has a crush on his best friend, and not just his best friend, but his male best friend. So it is 2005, a little bit of a different time. He's very worried about that, the implications that that could have on his best friendship, but also the fear of other people finding that out, and he does not want to be alone, isolated with no internet or phone access when he just kind of confessed his feelings for his friend, and now he's away on a family vacation just mulling over that and worrying about that confession and the potential fallout from that. We also have Fiona, and Fiona has juvenile idiopathic arthritis, so she does use a cane and she is very much struggling with that. She feels like her medical diagnosis and all of the different financial burdens and strain that is putting upon the family, she worries that it's her fault that her parents are in a rocky patch, just because it's really hard to have a sick child and then to have that child like feel like she's contributing to the strain. That's a lot. So all of these four people are under a lot of pressure. They're trying to make it a good Christmas, and of course our titular character Candy Cain might be lurking around the cabin to start picking them off and some other people off around the town one by one. So this one was a whole lot of fun. There's actually a sequel, and I'm kind of debating maybe picking up the sequel during this 24 hours because I did like this one. It was the perfect start to a 24-hour readathon, and I'm definitely putting Brian McAuley on a list of some of my favorite slasher writers, and I can't wait to read more from him because I've really enjoyed both slashers that I have read from him. So I'm thinking the next book that I am going to pick up, the next novella, I think I'm going to pick up Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. This is a classic, and it's the novella that inspired the classic movie The Thing. So I thought, of course, this is a snowy setting. If you know anything about The Thing, it takes place in Antarctica, and we follow a group of researchers as they find something they're not expecting to find, and all hell breaks loose from there. So I have seen The Thing. I enjoy it. I think it's a really solid classic that really holds up, and I'm excited to check out the source material. It is now 7:32 and I'm about 20% of the way through Who Goes There, so not very far at all. But after I finished my last book, me and my partner decorated, did the Christmas tree, took care of the dogs, took care of just getting like meal prep set up, getting set up for the week ahead. So I haven't been reading nonstop between my last update and now, just enough to dive into this one. And so far it does very much feel like a familiar story to me because I have watched The Thing, and I definitely think this is pretty interesting just based on it's like a sci-fi horror blend. This was originally published in 1938, and so some of the science and some of the things that the scientists know, or the lack of what they knew then, is very interesting when they are trying to make some risk assessments. But we are following a team of researchers in Antarctica, and they find something pretty incredible that they were not expecting to find. They find this ship, this proof of alien life, and they bring something back with them to investigate and look at it and examine it at their base camp. And at the very beginning of this one, they're very split on whether or not they should let this specimen thaw from the ice or not. So they take a vote, figure out what to do with it, and that's where it's very interesting to kind of see, because these are all very learned men in their fields. They're all very high profile scientists. They have different fields of study, but it's interesting to hear the conversations and the things that clearly even, you know, the experts didn't know at that time. And I definitely think that if this book were written today, were written in modern day, even if it were written in like the 1950s, I feel like the conversation of should we let this thing defrost or not would be completely different. So I think that's very interesting. It definitely reads like a classic. So it is, even though it is a shorter one, it's a novella, I do think this one might take me just a little bit more time than Candy Cane Kills, because that one was just so fast-paced and action-packed, and this one just feels a little bit slower as we are debating, unpacking the stakes, and now they've made their decision and they're all going to have to live or not with the consequences of that decision. So I'm gonna keep reading that. I do have to make dinner. Nothing fancy, it's just going to be a leftovers sort of evening, so I think I will update again right before I go to bed or when I finish this novella, whichever one of them comes first. But I think once I get into this one and I'm sitting down at the end of the night, now I don't have anything else left to do but read, I should be able to power through this one a little bit speedier. It is now 9:20 and I have finished Who Goes There, and honestly, I'm gonna say this is one of those cases where I do think that the movie, John Carpenter's The Thing, is better than the source material. This was such an incredible idea, and I think for the time when it came out, I feel like it just really was such an incredible story that captured people's imaginations, because apparently there was a movie before The Thing that was featured from this story, The Thing from Outer Space, something like that. But there have been multiple movie adaptations, of course, The Thing, and then there's like a 2010s remake of The Thing. So this story, the core story, has captured the imaginations of a lot of people because it is genuinely a chilling thought. However, this one just didn't have any of like the claustrophobia that I wanted. I felt like a lot of the ideas actually kind of worked a little bit better in a visual format like a movie. And while the basic premise was the same from this novella to the movie, there were some changes from this novella to John Carpenter's movie that I think the Carpenter changes made this a better story overall. So I'm glad that I read this classic. Just I didn't love it. It didn't work for me as much as I wanted it to. I don't think think it was, I don't want to say well written, but it was written very much of its time. So many adverbs. This story is incredibly dialogue heavy, and it gets very frustrating. The dialogue and the ideas and the way that these men are coming together to try and stop the thing is interesting. However, a lot of the action happens off page, or it happens like on page, but it's not described. We're just getting conversations between people, which I felt like was a little bit of a jarring choice for the writing style here. So glad to have read this one, but ultimately I do think that the movie in this case was a little bit better, a lot bit better actually. The movie was a lot better, at least in my opinion, than the novella. So I think to round out the night, we're going to pick up something a little bit more contemporary, and I think I have another novella that's going to capture what I wanted from my last read. I wanted a snowy, isolated winter setting, and I think This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau is going to do that for me. So I think I'm going to start this tonight. I don't know if I'll finish it tonight or tomorrow morning, but I think this is my last update for the night. I'm gonna take my makeup off, get ready for bed, and then I'll update y'all in the morning. Good morning. It is now 10:23 on Monday, and I didn't actually stay up late, nor did I wake up early. I just had a normal night's sleep, and that's okay. I did finish This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau, and I did enjoy this one. It's less than 100 pages, so definitely a very speedy ride, and I think some of my critique with this one is I do wish it was just expanded on just a little bit more, because I felt like the story had more potential than the page count allowed it to be. So we are following main character Miller, and she is packing for a weekend away with her estranged mother Sylvie, and she's packing and she's reflecting on how this is probably definitely a really bad idea. The two have not been in contact with each other. It's very clear from the jump that Miller's childhood relationship was strained, and then now they're just estranged because of the lack of boundaries and the toxic relationship that the two of them were in. So she's packing her things, and Miller's partner Florence is begging her to not go on this trip, because why would she? And Miller really wants to try and give her mother one last chance, because she's her mother, and Miller and Florence are getting married. Miller's not going to have anyone from her family there. Her father's dead. The mother's side of the family doesn't talk to her, and of course her relationship with her mother is strained. So she just wants to try and reach out and make one last ditch effort to try and repair their relationship. She feels like it's probably not going to work, but she wants to just give it one more go before closing that chapter of her book forever. So Miller's mother picks her up, and immediately they're having a conversation in the car. You as the reader are like, her mother has not changed. This is such a bad idea. But Miller can recognize this, so I don't think that's so frustrating, but she still decides to go along with it as this last ditch effort, and its alarm bells are ringing from the very first 10 minutes in the car as Miller asks what's the address of the cabin they're going to, because she just wants to give Florence the information. There's supposed to be very heavy snowstorms that weekend, so just for safety's sake, and just so Florence knows where Miller is going to be staying, just so Miller knows where Miller is going to be staying for the weekend, her mother's very evasive about that. This takes place in Canada, and they're going somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and Miller does not get told where that is. So from the jump, you as the reader, but also Miller a little bit, are like, this is not a good idea. If you want to try and make a final go at a relationship with your mother, maybe try to do it in a neutral third location, or a location that you can easily escape from. So they finally arrive at this cabin. The snow starts falling down and things just go from slightly a little bit red flaggish to weird to weirder to worst. And that's all the synopsis I'm going to give, because again, this one is very, very short, but I did appreciate it. I would love to check out something a little bit longer by this author, because I felt like this story, just from the beginning, you kind of knew where it was going to go, and just because it is so limited in page count, we didn't get a lot of the creeping feeling of dread and isolation. And then also just some of the plot beats, I feel like if this were even a longer novella, we would have more time to kind of experience things as the reader, as opposed to them being told to you. But that's just because this was so short. There were things that were very clear that were supposed to be plot twists, especially there's supposed to be a plot twist at the end that I feel like once you arrive at the cabin, you understand what is going on, and that doesn't make the book less horrifying or less creepy, but I do think that twist could have been better executed in a longer form book. But this one was definitely horrifying, and it was definitely a frustrating read, intentionally so, because of the toxic relationship that is at the focus of this story. So big trigger warnings if you have any sort of triggers for toxic relationships, a mother who is just not a very good or supportive or loving mother. I would maybe go into this one with caution, because it is a very abusive relationship in a whole lot of ways, and that's the focus of this small little novella. So if that's something that you can't handle right now, I would skip it. But I did think that the relationship explored between these characters did a good job, and of course it was just very frustrating and heartbreaking to read. I just wish this would have been fleshed out a little bit more, but I will check out more by this author if she comes out with something a little bit longer. And now we are reaching the final 2 hours of this very impromptu 24-hour readathon, and I think I know what I'm going to end this vlog out with, because I just realized that Hoopla has Candy Cane Kills Again, and that is of course the sequel to Candy Cane Kills, Candy Cane Kills Again, the second slaying by Brian McAuley. I think because I started this readathon with Candy Cane Kills, it'd be fun to wrap it up with the sequel. I think just based on the synopsis that I can see that this book immediately picks up where the first book left off, so it's going to be a very direct sequel following the survivors of the first novel. So I am very much looking forward to this one. So I'm gonna go get to reading and wind out this readathon with hopefully another success. It is 12:15, and that brings us to the end of the readathon. I finished Candy Cane Kills Again just in the nick of time to wrap up this readathon, and I'm really glad that I did. This one has the perfect right in your face Christmas slasher elements, and it picks up right after the first one leaves off. So the first one is Christmas Eve to Christmas morning, and this one is Christmas morning leading on through Christmas Day. So I did really appreciate what this one brought to the story. It definitely wasn't just a rehash of what the first book did. It went in a little bit of a different direction that I think really captures the essence of a series of slashers. This one definitely, you have to suspend your disbelief a lot more, but I kind of think of that as like the natural progression of a slasher series. Like if you take, for example, Friday the 13th, the very first movie feels so much more grounded and maybe not necessarily realistic, but it feels a little bit more rooted in reality than, say, Jason Takes New York or Goes to Space, something like that. So I definitely can see how this one kind of levels up on the camp and the unbelievability factors, but for me it was still very enjoyable. While the first one takes place in a cabin, a very isolated home style of setting, this one primarily takes place in a church, and we get to see more of of the lore behind our slasher, the titular Candy Cain, which I thought was a really interesting change from the first book. The first book, Candy Cain, she is such an interesting mystery of a slasher antagonist, and in this one, not only do we get to see more of her backstory and more of why she is the way she is and why she's doing what she's doing, but we also get a first-person perspective from her as well. So I thought that was really interesting. And while this one is still very campy and very fun and the kills are very over the top, we do explore a little bit of religious trauma themes in here and what would make a serial killer, because that's what Candy Cain is now at this point in the series. What makes her, what turns a person into that sort of human monster? So I thought that was really interesting and fascinating. I appreciated seeing that. I also thought it kind of made the kills a little bit more fun and wacky, because you saw her first person monologues as she integrated these Christmas carols and these like religious symbologies and things like that as she was planning out the perfect deaths for all of these people who have wronged her or simply get in her way from seeking out revenge. This book was definitely a great way to end out this reading vlog, and Brian McAuley is now one of those auto read authors for me. Whenever he comes out with a slasher, I'm going to pick it up because I'm just so impressed by the now 3 books that I've read from him. And I would really love, there were some very small aspects of this that had to deal with videotape footage and audio footage, and I would love to see, I think this author could do a really good job of writing like an epistolary novel that feels like a found footage movie. I feel like that could be right up his alley, so maybe we could see something like that from him in the future. But I really appreciate what he's doing with these slasher books that feel like such a love letter, kind of in the same way as Stephen Graham Jones, but their writing styles are very different. Kind of in the same way where there are tropes that are lovingly explored, but there's enough new spins on things to make the books exciting and entertaining. So while I do think I liked the first one a little bit more than the second one, it was by no means a bad sequel, and I had fun with this readathon overall. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, maybe leave some Christmassy emojis, or let me know what Christmassy horror that you're reading this year. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!